floodgates.
The floodgates are open.
Open.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, all the people around the whole world listening to me, Bella, and our very special guest, my cousin, Christian Noah Graham.
Fireworks going off.
Yeah. Thanks for
Nice.
coming on the podcast, bro.
You're
and our
welcome.
live-
Thank you for having me.
I know. You are in Wales, Alaska, population
110, 115.
Yeah, 110. Yeah, Inuit community, almost complete isolation, extreme weather, negative 50, 40 degrees today.
It's pretty warm, actually. I think it's probably like, I don't know, negative. Probably like -5.
Wow.
Dang, that is
beautiful
pretty
day.
warm, dude. Yeah,
I just ran over. I forgot my laptop in my friend's unit, and I ran over in this shirt, and I wasn't really that cold. So,
really?
yeah,
Let me see the shirt.
just this little flannel.
Nice,
Wow.
nice. You're like, wow, negative degrees, no big deal.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sunny
If you
day.
stay out at -5 degrees, how long would it take for you to get frostbite?
Frostbite? Man, I don't know. Probably like, I don't know. -40, it's like 4 minutes. So -5, probably like, I would have to stay out there for a while, probably like 20 to 30 minutes.
Well, there you go. Easy
Yeah.
day.
Easy day.
No big deal. No worries. No worries. No worries. Well, guess what? Other days you got bursting pipes because of
Yep.
the freshness. Maybe no water for days. We just had a conversation going, wow, maybe we got to go get buckets of water and bring them back on snow machines.
Yeah.
And depending on the wind chills, I mean, you've described -90 degrees plus blizzard and wind, frozen sea ice. I don't know where y'all live, but the ocean is frozen where Christian is.
Yep.
You know, you hunt for subsistence, all kinds of crazy animals, and you're a teacher in this community. It's freaking awesome, dude.
Yes.
You have like one of the most unique experiences of all time, which is why we wanted to know more about it, dude.
For sure.
Amazing. So, let's see. So, first of all, for most of the people that don't know about Alaska, you went from the lower 48 states to one of the most remote villages in America. What version of you didn't survive that transition?
Well, that's a good question. A lot of versions of me did not survive the transition. I think that, I just had a conversation with my mom about it. And when I was living in the lower 48, everything was super easy, up to that point, like I had lived a very easy life. I had everything provided to me. I had a mom who gave me the world and everything I asked for. And as long as I followed the path that she had kind of planned.
I was just gonna say, you
That
were
was
like
the
the
deal.
world's greatest son because you followed the directions. You were like, all right, if I just do it. She was definitely not unreasonable. Like, she didn't ask a lot from you. She's just like, don't make anything a problem for me.
And I didn't make anything a problem for her.
Yeah, exactly.
And in return, I got to do whatever I want. My life was fully funded. It was pretty awesome. And it was super, it was easy in the sense that, like, you know, I had everything I could have wanted. I never had to face financial instability or financial insecurity. I mean, it was easy.
Yeah.
Um, and then I went from that to, you know, moving, and I had all my friends, I had family was 2 hours away. You know, you were just a 2-hour drive away. I would go and drive to you, you know, so I had all my supports around me all the time.
Yeah.
And then this opportunity came up to come to Alaska, and, you know, I was like, yeah, I'll take it. So I get here, there's no Wi-Fi. I didn't have any cell service, so I couldn't call or contact anyone. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anyone. There's 110 people in the village, and I'm an extrovert, so that's a lot.
Yeah.
And then, it's cold outside, like really cold, and I lost all my supports, and I was financially taking care of myself, and that was that. And I remember I got here and I tried to text my friend, and I realized, oh, I can't text anyone. And then for some reason, I thought I could call. And I had that like boyish kid instinct to call my mom, you know, and the call didn't go through. And I remember being on the verge of tears. Like, I left all my friends, I left all my supports, I left all these easy systems to come here. And I was just like, man, I don't know what to do. And so I just walked around the house to my friend's unit, and my friends now, I didn't know them at the time. They were new teachers who came in with me, and we just chatted. And I realized really quickly that I would have to be able to adjust to, number one, being alone. And at first, I didn't really realize why that was so scary, but through the process, I realized I'd really have to get to know myself in a deeper and more radical way than I did before.
Yeah.
And I realized through that journey that, you know, in the lower 48, I mean, I was doing stuff every day, all day long. You know, I mean, I'd wake up at 5 a.m., do homework, get coffee, go to student teach. And then from student teaching, I would go to class. And then after class, I'm doing drinks with my cohort members. And then after drinks with my cohort members, I'm doing drinks with my friends. And then after that, I'm doing homework, going to bed at 2 a.m., waking up at 5 to do it all over again.
Yeah. Right. Right.
You know, and so there's no time alone. There's no time just being with yourself. And now all of a sudden, I have nothing but time. I'm at work for 7.5 hours, and then the rest of the day, I'm cut off. No Wi-Fi, nothing but just me and my thoughts. And so I realized that I didn't really know myself nearly as well as I thought I did.
Yeah.
And I realized that, you know, a lot of the thoughts and a lot of the ways that I perceived things was incorrect and wrong. And I didn't have to confront that before, but here I had to confront it every single day.
Right.
And so a lot of my perceptions on the way things worked, on the way people are, on how I am as a person changed. And so that was one way. And then that part of me that was just like, felt like I consistently needed to be around people, and I consistently needed attention, basically, you know, that part of me also kind of went away as well. Like, I still, you know, here I feel the extreme opposite, where it's like, I would like to be around more people. I definitely miss that on some days, but I found comfort in being alone and in being with my thoughts, and most of all in being in nature. And so, you know, the part of me that felt like, oh man, you know, I'm on this path, the part that my mom instilled of me of like, I'm on this path, I need to get a job, I need to find that person I want to be with, I'm going to buy a house, and I'm going to have that life that my grandfather and my mom instilled in me is what success is. That radically changed.
Yeah.
And I had to ask myself, what does success mean to me? What does happiness mean to me? And what do I really want from my own life? And so this experience has given me a lot more time and a lot more insight into what those things mean to me as a person.
Well, that was a pretty damn good answer, my friend. You said a lot of things in there that I'd love to go into, but understanding How long was the transition? I mean, you've been there for 5 years. So, I mean, it's easy for you in this part of your life to sum up what happened, but how long was that process for you to go from a life that was so comfortable for you and an identity that you had created for yourself to going, wow, I think I'm being stripped of everything that I thought I knew. And now I volunteered to be in this situation.
Yep.
And now, in order to feel fulfilled or not isolated or whatever it is, like, how long did that take and what did you come to?
So that's a great question. My initial gut answer is it's still happening. Uh, I'm 5 years in, but I'm still I'm still changing a lot and I'm still growing a lot in some of those ways. I would say the initial transition that was probably my first year I was the most rapid of changes. And I think it was spurred on by the fact that everything was just so sudden and the changes in my life were so stark. And
Yeah.
so it just prompted a really rapid response on my end to just like, I like when you talked about the fact that I chose to be here, accepting responsibility for that choice
Yeah.
and saying, I chose this. And so the best thing I can do is embrace it with every fiber of my being and see where it takes me. And so that led to that constant thinking and a lot of growth in my first year, which slowly continues to this day. I'd say every year it kind of trickles off in terms of like, I feel like I have a much better idea of who I am and what I want now. And so I'm not really focused on thinking about those things as much as I was in my first year. But, some days it changes and it can change with things that happen that day. It can change with my mood. And different things happen, different interactions with people teach me new things, and so that process is still ongoing, but it was definitely most intense my first year.
What do you think, babe? Have you ever experienced something in this way that was just so transitional for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now ultimately is like the biggest. I mean, I've traveled, backpacked for 6 months. I moved to Florida. But I did these things with a bit of a safety net. Like I was with my family, I was with my siblings, my sisters. And so nothing was ever so radically shaking because I still had this like sense of my home reality with me the whole time. But now deciding within like meeting Dalton like 3 months ago to kind of starkly put a bridge in that and like decide to move out of my sister's house and decide to kind of embrace something so new without really any knowing. Like it feels, even though I've like gone distances, it feels like I have never truly entered like something that was so unknown. And I think that's like the most confronting part when you do make big transitions and changes is the unknown. So, and then to like the most exciting and also terrifying aspect is who are you in the change? And then that question, I think, just continues to get deeper and deeper when you start asking yourself, like, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Yeah, and from that question, I think everything begins to change until you begin to resolve that question and find some clarity. So yeah, I think right now is a huge moment of that for me in my development and my growth of just like, who am I? And like, what do I want to say? Even this podcast, like doing this podcast, and getting more and more clear in what that question that means to me.
So what do you guys think about like identity, where this seems to be the theme of all of what we're working towards. I mean, or at least, you know, what we just started talking about now. Like, what do you guys think would be a good strategy to identify, or tools that you guys are using to help figure out who you believe yourself to be in this time where, you know, Bella, you're 23, Christian, you are 27. Yep, 27. I'm 32. So let's figure out ideas that we've all used to like really understand who we are.
Yeah.
Nature, I think, is one that is super powerful. I mean, it's hard to live in rural Alaska and not feel connected in some way to nature.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but whenever I'm like out in the country or out in the tundra, I just feel it helps me feel grounded, and it just makes me happy. Like, I just feel like, you know, in that first year, most of the time I was out in nature, it was just I was alone.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I would have all these experiences and see all these things. And it was like moments for myself. And just being in that beauty, it helped me feel really grounding. And I feel like it also triggers a lot of, reflection and thinking, and in a very natural and beautiful way.
I completely agree. I have the happiest, like when I think back on my life, like the happiest times are when I'm like actively engaging in nature in some ways, like hiking or walking or consistently. I think it just allows for this time of reflection and connection to something that's greater than yourself, and also recognizing how you were part of it. You're a part of this great big world that we live in. So I think I completely agree with nature, and also alone time. And then something that's new for me. It feels a bit like trial by fire, but it's like engaging with people, because like I very naturally want to have solitude and allow myself to really ponder on my beliefs and like who I am. But something that's been a bit transformative for me is speaking. Like that's been an uncomfortable thing that I've been having to approach recently, because it really is like this like in action confrontation of who are you, you know, and what do you want to say, and you know, and allowing yourself to not know everything and change in communication. But that's been an added layer of self-exploration that I've been engaging in recently, is like not being afraid to speak what I think, you know, and just seeing how
like
that
letting
goes.
go of. Do you feel like before, so if you weren't being afraid to say what you think, why do you think you were afraid to say what you think?
Well, I mean, many reasons. I think the biggest one is I didn't want to create conflict. It's like I didn't want to say what I thought, because maybe it would make an uncomfortable situation, or it would arise something that I didn't want to create, or like that's the biggest feeling I think when I think of that, is like saying what I truly think. I perceive that to be in conflict with maybe other people, but I think ultimately what I'm finding is that and time again, is like what I have to say is actually valuable, and it's not like conflicting usually. And even if it is, it's like, okay, but there's understanding, like to find, like it's not like an ultimatum of I say what I think and then there's conflict, you know. And I think previously I had felt that way, that it would be like not peace.
Sure. So then it was just like trial, like you had to experience having a differing opinion with somebody, and then also experience that it's possible that peace can happen within that.
Through that, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or like collaboration or unity I think Christian is a really awesome person to have intellectual conversations with, because absolutely you are a truth seeker and are willing to have a debate, and you're willing to feel like you are well, one, you are really educated in many areas, history being like your favorite. So it's great to have conversations with you, because you're not afraid to be like, well, actually that's not what happens. And yeah, not in an egotistical way, but like actually through since the dawn of time, like this is what we see as a pattern. Like, yeah, like, and here's 10 examples. You can Google it if you want, but
Yeah.
and your examples aren't just like in the Holocaust, you're like, oh no, there's this small tribe of 10 people, but what they saw across the land in 1519, you're like, you have these like hyper specific examples that literally nobody was like, we'd be like, all right, we're just gonna. I'll take
That's
word.
true.
Yeah,
There's no way we made that
up. It's funny. Anyways,
Yeah.
the point being is that, how is that for you guys, like something that you see is not a conflict to your identity?
What do you mean by that?
Like being able to disagree with somebody, and how is that, do you guys, well, what you were saying was that you let go of the fear of the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about identity, so letting go of that fear, like what is different about what you believe about yourself? And Christian, feel free to chime in as well, because I feel like there was a time where I remember you having very similar feelings as Bella's described. You're very much a peaceful person, and your mom also is very much a non-conflict kind of lady. She just prefers to not have that. So there is a time in your growth as well where you were like, yo, actually I feel confident to say something right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that like understanding there is a guy, his name's Nicholas Bradford, and he does trainings on like restorative justice in schools. And one of the things he talks about is why he believes that being conflict forward can be a good thing. And he talks about people's conceptions of conflict and how oftentimes conflict is viewed as a negative thing, when in reality, conflict, by definition, when people think of conflict in a negative light, they think of conflict in the sense of like disrespect. So being insulting towards another person, being argumentative, and not truly seeking to learn. Whereas when he talks about being conflict forward, he's talking about having conflict, having a disagreement in a respectful manner where both parties are coming together to try and take something away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that part of it was the realization that, conflict doesn't need to be disrespectful or negative in any way, and that a lot of growth and a lot of learning happens when you disagree with someone and you take the time to sit down and be like, well, no, you know what? I actually don't feel that way. I don't agree with you. This is why, but I'm really excited to hear what you think and how you feel about it. And then you have that mutual growth. And you may walk away. I mean, there are times where we've had conversations and we walk away with the notion of we're just going to have to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
But we both learned so much from that interaction that we're going to take away and reflect on, and maybe later we'll come to a common cause or maybe not. But either way, we still learned a lot from that interaction. And so I learned how to find comfort in those moments. I learned that those are moments of growth. And I learned that those are moments that I should embrace and look for, especially in a climate where everyone feels like we can't talk to each other without it being really intense or negative.
Yeah. Totally. Now, I'm curious to go back a little bit on this nature thing that you guys talk about and being in nature. And like, you know, obviously nature is a beautiful thing. You talk about having more of like silence or peace or being alone in nature, but like what about nature do you think really brings out an aspect of introspection?
I think, I mean, in one aspect, we live in such closed spaces. We live in walls and buildings and surrounded like by enclosedness. And so
I'm in a box.
I'm in a box.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we realize like the gravity of that and on our psyche of like there is horizon and there is space and there is like this room to breathe. And I think also, I mean, there's so much in nature that is unknown to the eye. Just like as a baby is a sponge, because everything, they don't know anything. When you become cycled in patterns of like, oh, I know that that's a sink and I know that that's a window and I know that that's a wall and that's a building or, you know, whatever. Like you enter the state of wonder a little bit of like, I actually have no idea how this works, or I've never seen that texture before. I think it activates a part
when you're in nature.
When you're in nature,
Right.
It's like you see like experiences that your brain is like unknown, and that automatically puts you in a like in presence and brings you to like this place of like curiosity versus like knowing or to do or tasking or whatever. It like softens you and makes you surrender a bit to like the obscurity that of we're on this planet, you know, and we really don't know much. And so I think that's like absolutely an aspect, is that it brings you into the present moment more like pretty effectively.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder a bit. Christian, I'm curious what you would have to say about.
I agree. I mean, I think it takes us out of these, you know, I like the term box. It takes us out of these boxes where, you know, I mean, it would be super easy to just come home and I do this some days where I just get on my phone and I start doom scrolling through funny stuff, and I'm looking at all the funny stuff D-Man sends me, and then I'm sending him funny stuff, and then I'm sending my other friends funny stuff, and next thing you know, I've just spent an hour or two on my phone, like, you know, scrolling through social media, and that can be funny and it can create joy for a bit. But I have a buddy who lives up here with me, and he was telling me that one of the reasons he loves backpacking for days at a time is the longer you're out in nature and the longer you're doing these things. He described the process of your thoughts slowing down so much to the point where, you know, and then it takes days, but when you're days into a backpacking trip, he would describe this feeling of like, at first your mind is racing. You're thinking of all the things going on. You're thinking of all the issues at hand, all the things that maybe are stressing you out, all the things you're thinking about in this world. And then slowly that turns into reflection. Now you're reflecting on things, you're reflecting on your inner self. The more time that you're disconnected from social media and all the things that are triggering your thoughts and your responsibilities, once you're away from those things, I think it gives you time to just start like thinking about, you know, that internal thinking. And then you move to this stage where, you know, you've processed a lot of things and now your thoughts start to get quieter and quieter and quieter. And he would talk about going stretches where he's walking like 6 miles, and, you know, it's almost like physically his body just took over, you know, and his mind isn't really thinking, you know, he's just moving in a path and in a direction. And so I think that nature has a way of removing a lot of things that trigger our thoughts and that grab our attention, And I think that it's really hard to reflect when we're in these boxes and we have tons of things grabbing our attention. Emails from work, messages on our phone, stuff in our calendar going off reminding us of what we didn't do and what we have to do right now and what we need to do tomorrow, and the banks trying to mail you bills and telling you how much money you owe or whatever, right? And I
Yeah.
think that getting away from all of that, your mind doesn't have a choice. It doesn't have those things to look to fill its space. The only thing it can focus on is just reflecting and processing. And then once you focused on that, then you can just, your body takes over, and then your body is just focused on being and existing in nature.
Totally. Well, this is the thing too. If I could go out in nature and just forget about all my bills for like 6 months, I think I'd have a clean slate. You know what I mean? I could be like, no, it doesn't exist. It's fine.
It doesn't exist.
No, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Credit cards are for the city. We don't do that. I collect firewood out here. I'm fucking rich.
Picking berries off hedges.
yeah, exactly. No, that's cool, man. So, what do you think that when you're in nature, it's kind of like, for me, I want to move more in nature. Like, I feel like it's really hard for me to go on a hike and just like stay. Like, when I'm in nature, I want to see more of it. Like if I go on a hike, I'm like beelining it all the way up to the top of the mountain. And then once I'm at the top of the mountain, I'm like, ooh, what's over at the other mountain? And I like want to go to the next one, or, you know, seeing things like that. And it feels good to be in my body, like, to use it to get to something. It's not to say that I'm incapable of sitting and like enjoying a view, but I mean, I've road tripped across the United States. I can't even tell you how many times. I don't even know. But just like all the way across, and in the whole time, yeah, I just feel like I want to go to see more.
Yeah.
You know, this is where this is how I experience what you're talking about as the curiosity. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. Like, how do you stay in one place? Because there's so much to see. Like, you know, I don't feel like it's possible to see all of it, which is like why it feels fun to be like, wow, this is amazing. And granted, like, hey, I've done the drive from the northwestern point in Washington all the way down to San Diego on the coast. That is my favorite thing. I've done that so many times. And it, you know, so I could say that is a repetitive thing that I would do. I'd go do that like all the time. That's a good one. But I feel like going in nature also, like, for me, inspires this feeling to come back to more of the civilization, to like provide something of value to everybody. Like, the feeling that I have in nature, I also love to figure out, how do I create this feeling everywhere I go? You know, because the reality is I'm just not choosing to be in nature all the time. That's not necessarily the life that I would choose for myself 100% of the days that I'm alive. You know what I mean? I enjoy being in the city. I enjoy being in nature, and I enjoy being in between. So for me, I create feelings within myself. And to bring this back to identity, like I use breath, or like, we chose this apartment to have a nature view, you know, like we're looking out to all the trees. Nice. There's a little city, and it's like, we are literally in the middle of the city, but we found an apartment on the edge of the city, and we picked this side so we could see all the nature, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you guys bring back from nature that, like, back into your box?
Joy, happiness.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I leave my box feeling a lot of negative feelings, right? And so I'm just upset about something that happened that day. I'm pissed off at someone because they said something I didn't like, and oftentimes, my reactions can be short-sighted. I don't know what that person's going through. I don't know why they said that. Maybe they just had the worst night of their life and are having a hard time. And I'm upset because they said some snide little comment, but like they could be having like a life-altering crisis. You know what I mean? And so I think that it can give you perspective for sure. Um, and I think that the reflection that comes out of that and the things that you learn maybe about yourself or about others are instrumental in like the way that you can support people. So like the three of us chose very socially driven professions, right? I mean, all three of us enjoy working with people. Otherwise, we should find something else that we should be doing.
Yeah.
And so when you're working with people and you're, coaching people and teaching people, because like, so an example of something that like I learned reflecting on numerous occasions was like, the separation between like, your role, the roles that you have in life and your identity, right? So like when I came up here, I thought that because I got a master's degree and I had a piece of paper that made me a teacher. And I thought that somehow people who didn't have those pieces of paper, it meant that they were less qualified to do it than I was. And that was a really short-sighted way of looking at the world. Because my role in the school, I am a teacher, but there are people without degrees, without pieces of paper that are teachers in the sense that they teach people things, and they could probably teach a concept way better than I could. And they have, quote unquote, no training or no certification for it. And so I think that the way in which we reflect things and the way that it shifts our worldview, bringing that back into the world and applying that to the way that we look at things and the way that we do our jobs, I think that that's kind of what I bring to the equation, so it's changed the way that like I interact with students. It's changed, the things that I've reflected on in terms of like something that happened that day and the way that I talk to a student, I've reflected on, man, that was not a great way to handle that situation. Like, what was the outcome that I wanted? What was the outcome that the student wanted? And, how did my words not provide either outcome, and how in the future can they provide that in the future? So I think that the reflection that I've done in those spaces in regards to that, I think it has made me just a better teacher, a better communicator. And yeah. So I think that those are some of the key takeaways I would say that I take from that. What about you, Bella?
Yeah. Well, I would just want to touch on something that you said. I think this is a version of the box that we put ourselves in as well, is these frameworks that are not the present reality. Like the box of teacher is something with a certification, or this role is something because it's identified as it, which is the opposite of what nature teaches us. Nature simply is exactly what it is, and it's like a tree doesn't grow because it was said that it was a tree. It just grows as a tree and does exactly what it's designed and meant to do from the seed. And so I think that's something absolutely that nature teaches just by being, is it shows us that it's not the box, it's not the label, it's not the thing, it's the being of it that is the true nature of reality. So I think I really appreciated that perspective that you were bringing. I also, from what you were saying about how, like, I'd love to go away in nature for 6 months and forget, and then like all taxes don't exist. And then, I think a lot of people will share that sentiment. It's like, yeah, well, this is all great, but reality. And it's like, well, this is the whole integration. Like, this is where having parks in cities, this is where having, just taking the time to, and this is, Atlanta is such, like, I love Atlanta. It is like, you have so many access to so much nature, even within a city, which is really special. But
That is cool like that.
like, even 15 minutes from this apartment is like completely like big river, like beautiful. So it's like, if you can't do the week-long backpack trip for whatever reason, you have different priorities in your life. It's the 30-minute walk on a local trail, that, and if you do that daily, it's a similar effect, to the mind, to decompress and relax and kind of like digest so much of the doing that we experience. So I think an effect that I feel when I'm in nature regularly is I feel more empowered to be myself, because I've shown myself that I can do a difficult thing. I can like go hike a mountain, or I feel the sweat on my body. I feel the like innateness of being alive, like as a like physical being. And I also like give myself the time to ponder on how I'd want to show up differently, or ponder on, what I am doing that I want to continue to do, or, allow for natural intuitive inspiration to come about. I don't know, without silence or spaces to do that these things happen. I think you have to create the conditions for the thing to arise. And I think being in nature and solitude is definitely like a fantastic catalyst for the inspiration and insight for yourself to arise. This is what I think.
What about for somebody, what would you guys suggest for people who don't live near nature, in the sense that like there's plenty of cities that are like a lot of Texas cities where, I mean, there's some places in Texas where you can go to a river or a lake, but there are other cities where you're like not really 20 or 30 minutes to nature. There's some places that are, I mean, Denver, Colorado, depending on where you're at, I mean, there's lots of nature in the mountains. But what about like past, an hour,
Yeah.
like having to go travel past an hour, something that necessarily isn't like 15 minutes down the road, to feel like, in Seattle, you could be in nature pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Las Vegas, you're going to have to go probably, depending on where you live, could be 15 minutes, could be an hour. California, kind of the same deal, depending on where you're at. So for these people who are not sub 30 minutes to nature, what do you think would be a good place or a good idea for them to connect with themselves in this way?
I think silence can be a really powerful thing. I think that just experiencing silence and really letting that silence fill you is important. I think that, like, really, when I think of the things nature does that really inspires reflection, it's disconnecting triggers to your attention. So things that are going to immediately attract your attention. So, turn off your electronics, find a quiet space, make sure you're, comfortable. And that could even mean like, if you have a park or somewhere quiet around you, because I know in cities, some people live in apartment buildings and you always hear noise and there's always a lot going on. So whatever space where you can find some level of silence and get away from anything that might distract you, I think that being able to think in that time is key.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Any sort of meditative practice, as well as the sky's always there. I would encourage people, even if you are walking in a industrial area, to shift your attention to like the sky, and just sort of notice something different. I think that if you go about your world with even the same curiosity that you enter a walk with or an adventure with, realizing that there's no separation between being in nature, so to say, and any moment, there's always like something new to notice. But I think ultimately, I agree that the biggest recommendation would be to create a moment of solitude in your day.
What about you, D-Man? You've probably lived in a more diverse range of places than Bella and I have combined.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think that you two are very similar in your strategy of stillness and silence. And I guess I would just, as you guys were talking, I was thinking, well, like Christian, you're saying to remove distractions. I absolutely agree that the distraction of like social media or a movie or I don't know. I mean, like you said, also social media could bring you potential joy. You know, there are definitely times where I'm feeling not so great, and I'm like, I'm gonna give myself some dopamine, and I'm laugh my face off, and then send it to that I love, and if they're having a bad day, they'll laugh their face off too.
Yep.
And some might totally ignore it, and hey, I don't give a shit because they're not wanting to be distracted by that at that time. But when they do, they're like, bro, you're solid videos, you know? I guess so what I'm saying is like in nature, you both describe the beauty of it, and that is a distraction to me. It's a distraction where it's distracting you from the thoughts of the past and the future. And I think that a lot of the times that our brain gets stuck into this like living in a time that isn't present. And like absolutely taking silence and stillness can, the point of meditation would to experience presence, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are many ways to go about meditation, but that is, I mean, yeah.
Well, right. So what would be the, like, if somebody's choosing meditation, what is the goal of the meditation?
I guess it depends on the style of meditation that they're engaging in, but.
Okay, what's a couple common ways to be meditation? You said silence, be in silence. We talked about
pure
that.
silent meditation.
Well, that's what you just suggested, both of you guys, is to create a silent space. So what would be the goal of that practice?
Right, that would be presence.
Right. And then in that time, the idea would be to just like let go of the thoughts, of the racing thoughts, kind of like your friend was describing being in nature for so many days at a time.
I think that's the first step, in my opinion. I don't know if Christian has something else to add, but I think the first step is the quieting of the mind. And then there's like further magic that comes about.
Sure.
The deeper meditation you go.
Right. What about you, Christian?
My biggest goal is just to remove like triggers of distraction, so I have a space to think about something. Like, I think that there are times where, you know, it's stormy outside and I can't go outside, right? I mean, you know, you guys live in a world where like it might be cold outside, but you can still walk outside and like be relatively safe. You know?
Yeah.
Like, there are days here where I walk outside and I'll get lost and freeze to death. So,
Yeah.
you know, or there's an animal like a polar bear around a corner, you know?
Yeah.
So there are days where, you know, when I can't go outside, like, I would say that it just depends on what I need in that moment, I guess. I like what you're saying about what is the goal or what is the outcome. I think it might be different every time you do it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there are times where I'm just like, man, I feel like I'm getting anxious about this issue and like I don't know why. So I'm just going to chill out and I'm just going to be present and I'm going to eliminate the thoughts from my mind and I'm just going to focus on like my breathing and I'm just going to focus on being present right here right now and being comfortable, right? And then there are other times where I feel the opposite. I want to think about, I want to eliminate my distractions, find a quiet space so I can just be alone with my thoughts and think about, whatever is troubling with me and really just kind of try and think it through,
For
So I guess I have to enter that space understanding what I want my outcome to be and what I want my goal to be. And then that's going to decide like what I'm doing during that time. Right. And then like what I like about nature, I totally get what you're saying with beauty being a distraction, right? Like you're reflecting and then you see like an Arctic fox run by and you're like, oh, Arctic fox. And then your reflection's gone, right? You're focusing
Yeah.
on the thing. But other times I find that like the beauty that you witness can actually be a trigger for even deeper reflection.
Absolutely.
Like one of the things I talk about a lot, which I think you mentioned before in one of your Instagrams, was like there was one day where I was walking up the beach and I was like what you were describing. There's a lighthouse that's like a mile and a half up the beach and I was like, man, I just want to get to the lighthouse so I can watch the sunset from there. And I was walking, 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 walking. And I get like a mile in, I'm half a mile away, and I'm like, okay, I'm almost there. And then I just look over at the water and I see just hundreds of thousands of bubbles on the beach. And in each individual bubble, I see a reflection of the sunset. And so I just see like millions of sunsets all right there. And the whole time I was walking, the whole time I had that goal in mind, I missed like a million sunsets in
Yeah.
little bubbles. You know what I mean? And so that was just a moment for me to pause and realize in that moment on that hike, for me, it wasn't about reaching the destination anymore. It was just about being present in that moment and looking for beauty everywhere my eyes could go, you
Yeah.
know? And like that lesson that I learned whenever I go out in the country is still somewhat on my mind. I actively try to pursue that level of thinking. Now, there are definitely times where I'm just trying to get somewhere and I'm snow machining and I'm going like 40 miles per hour, just trying to get to my destination for sure. But there are moments where, like, I'll be reminded of that and I'll let loose of the throttle and I'll just like try to look for beauty everywhere I'm going. So, yeah, I think that it really just depends on that's a long way of saying I think it depends on what your goal is and the key part would be making sure you understand what it is so that you know how to get there and what your mindset needs to be. Because sometimes, yeah, your mindset needs to be okay, I just need to get rid of these racing thoughts. But sometimes other times your mindset needs to be no, like I really need to reflect on this and I really need to be thinking about this right now.
Yeah. I have, for all the people who may be listening to these suggestions and like going, well, I don't know if that would work for me. This is like, for me, I want to take action immediately. So there are times in my life where I've had reflection and really like physically moving my body in some way was like I'm reaching the same level of understanding within myself, whether I'm totally distracted with the past in the future and I'm like freaking out. I'm like, I need to go bang it out at the gym. And then by the time I've like used my body in a way, I like don't even have the thought. I don't even care anymore, or I think that in the same way that you're going, well, I want to take this time to think of this one thing. I recently have had so much to accomplish, and I've chosen to do it with the intent of going, I know that I need to, or I want to level up my life, and it's going to require more action out of me. In order to get to this, like I don't feel it's possible to sit and reflect so much in a way where I'm not taking action. And so then in my mind, I'm really good at being able to take action and reflect at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
And so for me, I have this device on my arm. It's called a Whoop, and it measures my levels of stress. And the times that I'm the most stressed is when I'm not taking action. And the times that I'm taking the most action is when I have I have levels like super low. My body doesn't even perceive stress when I'm taking action. So, I mean, obviously there's not a right answer. Like everybody totally would want to figure out what works best for them. And the reality is that for some people, I would attribute most of my success to just taking massive action and a lot of it. And then I sleep better at night. This is why, like, when we went on these road trips up and down and going across America, like we were just flying. We were just going and going and going and going and going. And it felt so good. It just felt free. And the time in between, like you're talking about, Christian, where you're like, I'm going to go to the lighthouse. I want to see the sunset. But then you recognize that the process is really, there's a million times more beauty in the process than there was reaching it to the lighthouse. Not to say that the lighthouse isn't maybe more of like so epic. You're like, I'll never forget this one sunset. This one time I went here and it fucking blew my mind. You know, I don't know how many sunsets I've seen in my life, but there are a few that I won't ever forget.
Right.
But for sure, the beauty, and for me, the presence is the in-between moments. And also, I love people. So in the city, you asked like, hey, well, I've lived in a lot of places, for sure, is true. All over the United States, in other countries. And the way that I find the most presence is through community, or just, talking to people, learning about, other people's struggles and asking them questions, or asking them how would they go about the situation that I'm in, and some people have like absolutely ideas that for me would be terrible, and for them it would work. And then some people have ideas that I change my life immediately because they're like, well, I would do this. I'm like, I don't even know how I didn't think about to do that. So for me, community is easy to come present and feel love and feel like I don't have many problems because some other people are dealing with things that are way harder. So, like also, I like to feel, I tell myself an affirmation that it only takes a breath for me to change my state. So then, because I have this belief, I don't feel like it takes 20 or 30 minutes of silence for me to just get to this aspect of a mental place I want to be at, whether it's like letting go of the past or future, or feeling peace. Like I choose to have the belief that in one breath I can change my state. And oftentimes I do have that experience, and sometimes I don't. So it's not to say that it's perfect, but because I choose to have that belief about myself, I'm actively training that to happen the majority of the time, which saves time, and also really gives me perspective to let go of other people, my perception of myself judging myself, or other people judging me, where I could just take a deep breath. And like sometimes my brain, we have our relationship, and we have, what I love about Bella is that also she's willing to have differing opinions and to talk about it, and she's passionate about her beliefs, I'm passionate about my beliefs. I experience the same thing with you. That's why I love you guys. And in times, like my brain is super extreme, so what I'm undoing about myself is like being 100% or not. I'm like, my brain will easily go like, this isn't it or whatever. And it's not to say that that's how I actually feel, but in the emotional state, that was the first thought. I'm like, this isn't, this is not it, or it is, or whatever. And in a breath, whenever I hear myself say that, it's a trigger for me to go, I'm judging myself.
Mm.
And I wouldn't have that thought unless I was judging my own self. It's not possible for me to have this thought about us not having a great relationship, or the aspects of our relationship that are challenging aren't sustainable because of whatever reason my brain is making up. It's me judging myself in that moment. And most of the time, it has nothing to do. Like other people out in the world have their own issues. And for me, like some guy the other day sent me this long string of messages on Instagram telling me how chiropractors are quacks. I can't tell you how many messages that I get regularly about how the profession I chose is not real and how we're terrible people, all these things. Now, on social media, I'm actually like a magician when it comes to those comments, because all of those people who are like, I'm never listening to you, end up following me and loving all the content because I treat them with love and I validate their emotions. And I'm looking to do that in real time, because if somebody came up to me personally and said those things, like I may not have the same reaction as I do online in person. And so right now I'm looking to bridge that gap. And what's helping me is the belief of going, well, to bring this all back to identity again, like this isn't who I am. I am not who these people believe me to be. So now I don't have to prove it to myself that I'm that way by arguing with someone else.
Right.
So I don't give a shit. Hey, you want to see me like that? That's fine. It'd be better if you didn't, for you and your family. If you want to have the highest level of health for you and your family, you may want to change your perspective. And I respect you if you don't, but I'll be at your funeral and you won't be at mine. So, like, simple day.
Yeah.
But that comes from daily affirmations from me. Like, I have a list of daily affirmations that help me understand who I'm choosing, who I am.
Right.
Yeah. Like, and when I tell myself these affirmations every day, I have found that I've had to be with myself less because I have no question on who I am. Now, there are situations that I've been experiencing, like in business, where I don't have much experience living through these times. So now my goal is to go, well, no matter what the situation is, how do I just move forward with the beliefs I already have about myself, to where I'm not limited to, well, every time I come into a new aspect of life, now I have to take all this time to like figure out who I am. I just want to figure out, how do I move with and take myself out as a variable. And I think that in all of our professions, really, that is beneficial to all the people that we choose to serve.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it'd be cool to talk about, what is it that you feel like, what's a common identity in the place that you live amongst, you mean there's 100 people, you probably know everybody. Yeah. And what are like what's misunderstood about their culture that people in the lower 48 don't know? Or, what's something that we would get wrong about their life, or who depends on who out there,
Yeah. That was a lot. I really like what you said. Sorry, I'm still kind of reflecting on some of the things you said. I like when you were talking about being able to do it in a breath. And I would agree, like, I I'm not advocating for the idea that like you need to find silence or you need to find nature to reflect. I mean, I think we agree that it's different for everyone, you know?
Yeah,
But
totally.
there are definitely times in my job as a teacher where like sometimes all I have is a breath to
Right.
recenter and refocus, right? I mean, I have, you know, a very small class size compared to the lower 48, but the main difference being all middle school and high school, you know? So I have,
Yeah.
you know, from, you know, wild little immature eighth graders to seniors who are just trying to get their work done and graduate and everything in between, always shouting Mr. Graham all the time, you know?
Yeah.
So sometimes, you know, I think your daily affirmations come in a good place where it's like, you know, you sometimes all you have is a breath and you need to be able to recenter and refocus in that moment. So that was really cool. Thank you for sharing that. In terms of where I live, I think some of the biggest misconceptions that people have, um, I think first of all, people really don't know a lot about Alaska in general, like the state, and then people especially don't know a lot about the indigenous people who live in this state, you know. Alaska is huge. It's the biggest state in our country. It's absolutely massive. Um, and it's probably the most extreme state in terms of like weather and just raw nature and survival. And so the people who live here are can be very extreme as well because you know the people who live here um when you live in a place like this and you grow up winter after winter and experience the different hardships, um I would say that it's just a very different lifestyle to live than the lifestyle that most people in the lower 48 live. Not to say that people in the lower 48 don't go through periods of their time where that's life or grow up in places that are very extreme and dangerous in their own ways that are different than where I live. But I would say, in terms of like identity for people here, something people might not expect is like how important humor is. Like everyone's always joking and keeping things lighthearted because when you have 2.5 hours or 3.5 hours of sunlight a day and it's -40 outside and there were storms and you know all this crazy shit just happened, you know, everyone's just trying to keep things lighthearted a lot of the time, and so humor is really important in that. um the people's identity here is deeply tied into their culture, so there's a lot of like um something I try to do is separate my identity, who I truly am, from the roles in life that I do. And, you know, generally I'll pick roles that are suited towards my identity, right? That are suited towards the strengths that I have. But here it's a little different. You know, there are really well defined roles, and people often take that and it melds into their identity, you know? So gender roles here are more common than in the lower 48, you know? And there are always exceptions, but generally, like when someone's hosting a craft night where they're teaching people how to sew, there aren't going to be a lot of men that show up, you know? And
Yeah.
then when you have hunting parties going out, and people are going hunting or someone gets a walrus and they need help cutting it up, you know, a lot of people are going to go and there are definitely going to be women there, but generally there are more men than women, you
Yeah.
know? So there are definitely more defined gender roles. And so part of that plays a part in their identity. Their culture and their history and who they are plays a big part in their identity. Um, and yeah, I would say overall, very communal. Community is at the center of everything. I mean, ultimately, the only reason we all survive is because we work together. Um, and there's a lot of conflict in that. You know, when you know everyone in the village and it's only 100 people, everyone kind of becomes and a lot everyone here is pretty much related to one another in one way or another. There's a lot of working together, but there's also a lot of conflict. And so I think some of the things that would surprise people are how conflict forward people here are. You know, people are not afraid to tell you when they think you're wrong and when they think you're making a mistake, and they're not afraid to call you out in public about it either. And that can be a very jarring thing when you come from a place where it's more normal to kind of pull you aside and have a discussion and, you know, kind of air your grievances in private almost. But up here, everything's in public. You know, if you make a mistake, you're going to be blasted for it publicly, or you can be. And so that can be an adjustment. But ultimately, I would say that um, community is a central part of identity. Survival is a central part of identity, helping each other survive, helping each other make sure we have the resources to make it through the winter and to stay warm and to stay safe. Using humor and jokes and keeping everything lighthearted, because inevitably there's going to be tragedy and hardship. Um, and just supporting each other as much as we can. I think that those are all central parts of who we are. And having an understanding that, you know, um, it's a really hard life to live up here. And in a lot of ways, you know, the kids that live up here have to grow up really fast. And so, as a part of their identity, I think it's really hard because they have to experience a lot of things that, you know, normally we would try to shield kids from. And so, a lot of the students that we have, they grow up really fast. And that comes with a lot of pros, but it also comes with a lot of consequences as well.
Like what?
Well, I mean, just experience like, you know, when you experience trauma at any age, it impacts you, right? When you experience people you love and people you care about and you watch them die, you know, that can be one of the hardest things that we as human beings go through. And when you experience that over and over and over again as a young person, you know, where you're I mean, when you're young, you're trying to figure, what does identity mean to you? Who are you? What are you? Your body is changing, you're emotional all the time, you're, you know, like someone says something and you don't know what to make of it. I mean, when you're just like a hormonal teenager trying to figure out what your identity is, it's hard enough. And then on top of that, you have people you love and care about. Sometimes people who are the ones responsible for taking care of you dying unexpectedly and tragically. And how do you process that? You know? And so it can be a really big struggle for kids who go through those experiences to figure out, you know, what to do, because sometimes in the midst of that they're put in a situation where, you know, their primary caretaker died, and so now they're literally physically taking care of themselves and their own needs, you know, and people are kind of trying to help as much as they can, but um those people may be suffering too and may not know how to deal with those feelings. And so now you have this kid who's trying to take care of themselves, who went through traumatic experiences, is trying to figure out their own identity, but is also trying to do all these other things. And, you know, it's hard. It can be really, really difficult to stay motivated, to feel like, you know, to know what to do. Like a lot of the times it's just like, well, what do I do? You know? And then a lot of times they're so exhausted from doing all of that that, you know, the idea of going to school or doing these things that we would consider on the path to success are just like feel like a huge struggle. You know what I mean? And we were raised in an environment where we had people looking out for us and teaching us and encouraging us our whole lives. And some of these kids that I've worked with don't have that. And so it can be really difficult sometimes. And then they go into adulthood not having had that, and then are trying to be adults in the adult world and continue to take care of themselves and continue to do this, and are basically kind of figuring things out as they go all alone.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel that with this awareness and being able to be such a part of that life, what has changed for you internally to be able to be a resource and a friend to children that live like this?
I had to redefine what it means to be successful.
Mm.
Um, I mean, growing up, my mom and my grandpa taught me that, being successful means you get good grades in school, you finish college, you get married, you have children, you own a home, financially you're doing well. That's what success meant to me. And when I came here, I was like, yeah, I want to teach kids about history was my primary passion and my primary goal, but ultimately I wanted to help them be successful in life. And so when I saw that kids weren't getting good grades or they weren't working towards these goals, I was like, man, they must just not want to be successful, you know? And that was very short-sighted. And there was a friend of mine had a student and who didn't come to school regularly at all. And we would talk about the student all the time and then and talk about how it was so bad and it wasn't good and they weren't learning these skills. And then this teacher went with this student and their family to a river and they went fishing. And then this like fourth grader was pulling these salmon, fishing for salmon, catching them on their own, pulling them onto the shore, grabbing an ulu, a traditional knife, and filleting them perfectly. And like taking care of themselves, going and picking berries for their family. They knew which berries to pick and which berries not to pick and why, and how long to store them for, and how to prepare the fish, and how to do all these things. And you're like, well, if you live in rural Alaska, that looks pretty fucking successful to me. This kid can take care of themselves. They
Yeah.
know how to get food. They know how to store food. And before we came here and before the Russians arrived and everyone arrived, that was success here.
Yeah.
Getting your own food was taking care of your family. It meant getting through the winter. It meant that you would make it another year. And so that student was demonstrating that they were very successful in doing the things that they were supposed to do in that regard. And so I had to really radically redefine what success means. And I had to understand that, like, I'm trying to get these kids to be successful in the way that, our education system deems successful. And that might not meet the same definition of my students. Most of my students, many of them don't really want to go to college. Many of them want to live in the village and work the different jobs that are here. And so I don't know. I think that is probably the biggest way in which it changed me, in which I had one of the biggest ways I had to change to be a better resource of support for the students. And I mean, still to this day, sometimes I struggle with it as well, because sometimes my mind very easily slips back into that space where I am like, well, no, this is what I think being successful means. But I really had to reevaluate that.
I want to bring up two things that are on my mind so we can decide where to start. Two things that I think would be really interesting to talk with you guys. One is on this level that you're talking about of defining success and reestablishing that success to you is not success to somebody else, and realizing that depending on who you are and where you are, what your goals are, like, your definition of success is going to change. So that's one thing. Meaning, so if we talk about, well, how does somebody define what success means to them? How do they evaluate, no matter where they're at and what their situations, like, how does somebody come to this place of, like, how do I find success for myself? The second topic I was thinking about is we had a conversation the other day about why I believed people in the lower 48, specifically in this country, their life is so comfortable that they're stressed. Like they have so much stress that because there's such little adversity compared to being in a place like where you're at, where survival is like you have to know, or else you don't make it that year. You know, it's like survival. I was talking about how it was way more peaceful for me to be at war than it really is in this moment, like going through chiropractic school, going through business school, running this business, trying, you know, building our relationship, being in a band, like all the laundry list of things I'm doing all at one time. Like it was more peaceful in a state of survival than it was in comfort. So I don't know which one sounds more interesting to talk about or what, but I think that
They both sound kind of fun.
I know, yeah.
You guys want to do success first?
All right.
So are you trying to define success? I feel like most people define success externally, right? I mean, I did. That would match my definition of success before I moved here, right? So like external being like money, house, job, influence, recognition, position, higher role, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, those could be markers of success for you. I mean, those are definitely outcomes, right?
What would we define? Like, what if we just go around and just go, what is success for the three of us? And see what we say.
Okay, dope.
Do you want to start since you're already on it?
Man, ooh, this is kind of scary. Yeah, I'll do it.
You're like, if I say it, then am I it?
Man, what is success? For me, simply just like I guess success would be getting the things that I want, which is personally like I want to be happy. I want to feel happy. I want to surround myself with loving relationships. I want to feel fulfilled. And I want to make enough money to live comfortably.
Can you define what living comfortably is?
Yeah, like I want to be able to pay my bills every month and not have to worry about living paycheck to paycheck.
For sure. Yeah, that feels nice.
Yeah. You know, and that might mean going out and having a couple of dinners, going out to a bar with friends. You know, I want to be able to do those things regularly without having to worry about living paycheck to paycheck. Because there was one year when I was in Nome where I did, and it's stressful for sure. Yep.
Yeah.
But then there's also like, oh, sorry.
Pretty good. Keep going.
Like, I guess questions I would ask myself too, in terms of like, if I'm successful is like, am I progressing? Am I improving? Am I growing? Am I the kind of person that I would respect too, you know? Sure. And then like, what does it look like when linking it back to identity, like who am I when people aren't watching? And is that someone that I respect and that I look up to? And is that am I being the person that I want to be? Am I proud of myself in the way that I'm acting and doing things like that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you.
That's pretty damn good definition. I like it.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think the last thing you said really stuck out to me. in my, like, I think success for me would be just absolute like respect for myself and like how I live, no matter what the outcome, no matter what like externally is there. If I feel like I've made every decision and choice really from like my heart, I think that would be like such a high degree of success to me. Then to like to live with love as the forefront, and to be of service to the world, and to be taken care of, because not because I am just taken care of like financially, like get my needs as a human being met, but because I give, I also receive. So like there's this like exchange of like real authentic abundance that is naturally happening because I live a life of service and love, and that is like just flowing from me. So I think that would be success. And also a little tidbit, like to be stable enough, like to not be living paycheck to paycheck, but to be stable enough in whatever, it doesn't really matter the scale that I own or have, but like in whatever reality that is, to be able to have slowness and not feel like I need to be, like I should be making money, or I should be doing something else, or I need, like I have to have these like real survival forces of obligation. I would love, like success would be to be able to live slowly in this way, like to live intimately and not be in survival mode. I think it would be success to me.
Yes. I think I'm going to take my belief is a bit more of a philosophical one, in the sense that I think that, or maybe it's delusional, but I think that being alive is a success to me.
Yeah.
Because we had a conversation the other day about, you know, people's belief of heaven or hell or whatever it is, and to me, I believe that this is heaven. Like our human experience is heavenly compared to heaven, because in a sense we graduate to eternal love and bliss and only positive feelings. When I look at that and I'm like, well, what about the other half? What about the disparity in the challenge, in the sadness, in the sorrow? Like, to me, that doesn't sound as full. I think that being a human being and being alive, no matter what the circumstances are, and I've had like many different circumstances. I've been a heavy drug user multiple times in my life. I've been in situations of war where, you know, I didn't know if I was going to step off the plane. And if it did get hit, I'd hope that it crashed real hard so I wouldn't have to survive and fight my way to more survival, you know? And I'm, you know, living in a beautiful apartment in Buckhead, Atlanta right now, overlooking gorgeous nature. I mean, I've lived in Las Vegas in hotels. I mean, I've had a very full life. So I feel like I absolutely share values that both of you guys have described. Like, I want to be happy. I want to have an incredible relationship. And I also would love to have monetary, I want to have a ton of money, because one of my purposes in life is to change the healthcare system worldwide. And I think it'd just be way easier if I had trillions of dollars to be able to help create a system that keeps people healthy, because I don't think that system exists right now on a wide scale. So, for me, the money is rooted in leverage to help create a world that is easier for people to express whatever they believe success is. So for me, success is like being alive and having every emotion on the grandest scales, and not judging myself for any point of the spectrum that on whatever day I'm at. I think that it's impossible for somebody not to live their purpose. Maybe when we pass away, we're unaware of what the purpose was. And maybe I'm sure that feels sad to many people. Like, I don't even know why I had this life. But there's probably a purpose at some point. Maybe they had a conversation when they were whatever years old with somebody else, and then that person, because of that conversation, changed the world in a positive way. They had no idea, though, So, I feel successful in my endeavors to just continue life in all ways,
Yep.
So, how can we figure out a piece of a tip, like a pro tip for somebody who's in a place where they're like, I know I'm meant for something, or maybe they're opposite where they're like, I'm not meant for anything. How do we encourage those people to judge themselves less?
You first don't die. Step one.
Yeah.
It's gonna be hard to do these things if you're dead.
That's a good suggestion. I like it.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think that if you feel unfulfilled and you feel like you're sad or anxious all the time and you feel a lot of negative feelings, I think that obviously is a sign that maybe, something's up. So I think you need to kind of assess where you're at. And just figure out, do I feel fulfilled with my life right now? And if so, why do I feel fulfilled with my life? Why? I think that we all described our different versions of success. And so I think having some understanding of what that is for yourself is pretty key. And I would say, I guess my suggestion of don't die was partially funny, but also partially true in the sense that I live in a place where I have to be careful, I have to kind of go out of my way to make sure that I'm being safe and that I'm not going to die, because easy mistakes can result in pretty drastic consequences, which you experience too. And so, I think that definitely preserve your life, definitely try to figure out what state you're in. And yeah, I would say you need to really do some thinking about what are the outcomes that you want to see in your life. I agree that everyone is living in their purpose. I guess your question was more about how do we get people to not judge themselves, right? Was kind of more along the lines of what your question was.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about however. I think that maybe the idea is how do we inspire somebody to figure out what success means to them? Because for you, it's changing. Maybe just going, hey, guess what? That's going to change throughout your lifetime.
Yep.
Maybe just accept the fact that if you define what success is today, then tomorrow you might learn something and change it, and who cares? So change it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like you definitely have to have a love for yourself, a love for who you are. And like you talked about, like everyone has a purpose. And a lot of the people who don't know that, don't understand it, or don't believe it, genuine are generally can be pretty sad people.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know, because once you start to feel like the suffering, the chaos, the tragedy, the trauma is happening and you don't know why, and you don't have that purpose that you're living, and you don't feel like you're fulfilling that, and then you're just trying to come up with your own reasons. No, I don't think that's going to work. And generally, when I've seen people try to do that, it works pretty poorly. Um, so I definitely agree that understanding that you're living your own purpose, and understanding that, you know, you are, I mean, I don't want to get super spiritual with it, but like you are loved, and you are, I believe that I am a being with a soul, and that I am divinely loved, and
Yeah.
I am fulfilling my purpose. And in that regard, like, yeah, my definition of success will change throughout life, but that feeling will never change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think it would be cool for you to talk about that feeling, because you speak on that well.
Well, to get spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I mean, I think love is the fabric of everything. Um, it's the one thing that's always constant. And when we are in this down spiral, shame, fear, guilt, doubt, scarcity, whatever these like energetic down spiral emotions that we all experience, it's the perception of not love. And I say perception very directly because ultimately love is always there. It's just the perception that it's not there. Um, it's this like quiet tone of being, the innateness of being alive, which is why I think your definition of success is the most true, because the beautiful thing about this whole thing is that it is love. And no matter what you're experiencing, no matter if you're in war, if you're in the most comfortable position you could ever be in, there's the thing of the mind that is going to perceive suffering, and it's going to experience suffering, and that's the separation between that innate feeling that we are held and we are loved, and like there is no action that we can do that can't be met with love right thereafter. And there's no way you could be other than when you're perceiving that you're not loved, that will be wrong. And this to me, to like, there are a few things that we've said that like I want to touch on is one, this to me is the purpose of meditation, is to connect to that quiet buzzing of love that we are internally, and to quiet this separation that we perceive, the I need to do this, the output. And it's a very active endeavor. It's not something where it's inactive. To sit quietly is actually very difficult. There's a lot of action that goes along with it, and so I think the intention is to just be in this love that is present in all things all the time, no matter where you are. And two, to nature, I think a lot of suffering also comes from the holding on to that things don't change. And so if I were to give advice for how to the question was to advice to discover a purpose, or
No, inspire somebody's idea of success.
yeah, so to inspire somebody's idea of success, I think a correlation I was making in my mind was I think a lot of this idea that we're not successful or that this situation happened and now I'm here and I don't know how I ended up here, whatever the story is that I think a lot of it is this resistance to change, this resistance to life and acting. And like life is like this material world, this life that we live in is ever changing. Like that is one truth of it all, is that it's always going to continuously change. So I think if I were to offer something is to start to love that and embrace that aspect of life, to not ruminate on the past and say, oh, I wish it was this way, or be so connected to the future that like, oh, it's not here, I wish it was that way, but to say it's all changing.
Yeah, or feel like, what about like, I'm sorry to interject.
No, it's okay.
To feel like because of what happened, now the whole future is doomed.
Right. It's but when we're able to embrace change and love it, because that is the nature of like this physical life that we're in, that there's so much power in that. One, you have the ability to change your life internally, externally. Two, there's no right way that your life should be. I mean, it could be 1,000 different ways, and, and each of them would be just as special. Like it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter where it's going even, but each moment, how, it doesn't matter, and it matters indefinitely. Like there's so much purpose and meaning in each of our lives. And so I think like that is the duality of it.
The comparison really eats people up. You know, like some people really would love to have a small home in a quiet town in a family that loves them. Like, and that's like, you could have a multi-billionaire come and tell you that that's all he wants is a family that loves him.
Yeah.
Yet, you know, he's got this big old McMansion in Malibu or freaking Miami or something, you know, on the water. And
crazy.
He's, you know about those times. So I think you articulated your thoughts so well. It's cool.
Yeah. Well, and just one last little point to in the beginning of the podcast is just, this is why nature is so important to me as well. Because you go in nature, you go to the same trail every day, and you're going to notice something different because it's ever changing. And that's the nature of reality, is that it's ever changing. So when you start to discover that, there's such a different intimacy that you're able to have with your own life and notice how beautiful it really is. And it is ever changing, and there's no, like, it's not supposed to look one way. It's supposed to be yours and different and expressed in this way.
To put a plug for Christian and Christian's a teacher.
Yes.
I think that my perspective changes when I walk on the same trail, a metaphorical trail, because I could go into the same building with the same people, go to the same school. But my affirmations to myself, how I view myself, there's always something new to see. And the direct correlation in my mind is the more that I learn, the more that will change. Yeah. Like the less that I'm learning, the more everything starts to be the same.
The more that you learn, the more everything starts to be the same.
Nope. The less that I learn, the less I learn, things become the same, the less I learn.
Yes.
And the more I learn, the same things change.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your students, you mentioned that you're trying to figure out how do you really bridge this gap between a traditional education and what your kids feel as successful in their place? Like, how are you bridging that gap?
It depends student to student. I mean, some students, their idea of success is the same idea as mine was, right? Going to college and doing well in school, and for a teacher whose job it is to teach within the specific like Alaska state education system, students who want that and believe that that's success, that's what our system is geared towards. So it's super easy to bridge that gap in those cases. In other cases, I agree with Bella. Like the I think the best way that I can help my students is to show up consistently and provide consistency in the space that I create in my classroom, and to show them that I love them. And I think that those things are the foundation of building a relationship and building trust and building the relationship that is needed to understand what that student wants out of life and try and help them figure out how to make that a reality for them. You know, I mean, our goal at the school is just to support these kids in pursuing their dreams, whatever they are, you know. And so if I have a student who's like, hey, you know what, I want to graduate from here and go to college, dope, we're going to get you all the scholarships we can. You know, we have a wonderful counselor. She's the fucking best. And she is going to figure out every opportunity you want, and she's going to make it happen, you know? And I'm going to do everything I can as your teacher to provide you with the tools and the skills and the information you need to go and be successful in those spaces, you know? And then if I have a student who's like, nope, I don't want to go to college, I want to graduate from high school and work at the store, great, dope, let's get you there. What skills do you need? What are you going to need to know? What, you know what I mean? And so what's unique about where I live and teach, and this is part of the reason I love it, all my students are amazing. All of them are incredible little human beings that have all these really cool dreams that I want to see come true. And I actually have the time and the space to work with them individually to try and like make them a reality, you know? I mean, I definitely get bogged down by all the administrative bullshit that I have to get done, and that is a thing. But I do have a lot more freedom in getting to work with each kid individually, learn about them, know what they want, and try to help them kind of work towards that thing. And so those are the ways in which I try to bridge those gaps, is just get to know my students, make sure they know that I'm here for them and I'm consistent. And then, you know, ultimately, you know, they have to choose to be willing to receive my support. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so just establishing that foundation and then helping them figure out what they want to do and guiding them towards that is really kind of generally the way that I do that. And, you know, there are hiccups in the process. And sometimes, like, you know, there are certain students where relationship building, even after you work with them for years, is every single day, you know? And so with those students, especially, I think that I try to be far more cognizant of the things that they're going through and the way that they're feeling. And in those moments, I think everyone needs to recognize that you are responsible for the way that you respond to things, even when you're not responsible for the circumstances.
Right.
And so I'm not responsible for the things that that student is going through or dealing with or doing, but I am responsible to the way that I respond to them when they're struggling and they're processing that in my classroom, you know?
Yeah.
And so those are kind of the ways that I try to bridge that gap and work with them on that.
That's cool.
That's amazing.
What do you think your students would say their favorite thing about you is?
Well, I don't know. Man, I don't even know. Probably how chaotic I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a pretty chaotic teacher.
What does that mean? I want to know what that means.
It just means that, like, you know, as a teacher, you're supposed to provide a lot of structure and routine and consistency. And I do that, but sometimes I also think that rules are meant to be broken a little bit, and consistency is meant to be thrown down the drain. And so
Nice.
sometimes I can, like we might be in the middle of class, but then maybe we're walking into another classroom and disrupting their lesson and having fun. I don't know, it can be crazy day to day, but sometimes I think the kids need a break to the routine. So I try to introduce a little chaos and a little distraction. If I can tell that a student is getting upset working on a problem, then I distract them from their work. And then they think, oh, Mr. Graham, you lost focus. You distracted me. Ha ha ha. I'm not doing my work now. But now they're laughing and having fun, and they're not stressed about this stupid problem that's not going to define their future. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think moments like that. The things the students have told me is that they appreciate, I think a lot of my students feel like they know that they can come to me and talk to me. And they know that I will do what I can to support them. I think that most of my students feel that way. There are a lot who have expressed it. So yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I also I love this answer because it speaks to like so much of what we've been talking about as well, like with Dalton being like, well, what if silence, it just is not for you, and it's like ultimately it's a dance. It like everything is like, what is the medicine for the moment? Like it's not
Yeah.
there's not one answer ever for that question, and that's the beautiful thing of being an individual is like, okay, you saw there's something greater for that student than what she needed, or he needed to in that moment, and that was to understand that this is not something worth
It's not that
suffering over.
serious.
It's not that
It's not that
deep. It's not that
serious.
deep. But then,
Yeah.
your life becomes massively chaotic, and you need structure, so it's like it's this flow and this dance of just finding that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It's true. It's cool. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I mean, I could go more, but if you got stuff to do, then we can put a bookmark in it. But if you
No, I'm okay to keep going if you are. Do you want to talk about that other question you had?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because that's a good one. For all of you who are here, I'm gonna break my cycle. For all of you guys who've made it almost 2 hours into this podcast, we're gonna drop a free link below to daily affirmations so you can get your identity easy and calm. And if you want, check out some of the stuff that we're doing. Shameless plug. If you want, reach out to Christian, because listen, this guy, he knows a thing or two. I know we're just like scratching the surface of like all the crazy stuff that you know how to do, but like if you are also in an Inuit tribe in Alaska, there's many, there's multiple ones. You never know.
A lot of villages.
If they're in a village and you feel like, wow, I wish we had some more people in our village like Christian Graham, then, is there like a way that they could reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I could drop my email.
Yeah.
Like your teacher email?
That'd be great.
Probably my personal one.
Okay.
Private access.
Private access. Okay, we'll put that in a link in the description below.
Yep.
If you guys, if you're, a student and you want a little bit of Mr. Graham in your life, then maybe they can reach out to you and do that. I know I totally just plugged you and you didn't even ask, but I figured it'd be all right. So anyway, he's my cousin. I'm allowed to give his information out.
Okay, not to
Yeah.
not to freely continue to plug Christian, but also if you're interested and you just graduated as a teacher, I feel like this would be a fabulous resource if you're interested in doing some work similar to what Christian does. Like that would be
That'd be sick.
Let me know if you want to teach in rural Alaska. I can tell you why it's one of the best decisions you could make.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yep.
All right, guys. Okay, cool.
Back to business.
Back to seriousness now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The other one, okay, so now there's a few aspects of this one. It was the original idea is talking about people who are in this place of like neuroticism or depression or anxiety or like experiencing a hard life in a comfortable world.
Yeah.
Versus being in a hard world and having a comfortable life. Like that's the main idea. Comforting meaning like mentally comforting, not saying that like it doesn't take planning and like you have to go out and do work, and like not to say that that's absolutely relevant.
Yeah.
In a survival situation, you know? I mean, and maybe we could talk about this, but also, you know, you have really incredible stories about hunting and survival in Alaska, which are also super thrilling. To talk about the food that you guys eat, what you catch, how the whole village like also comes together, or school will be canceled to go grab food, you know, catch a whale or whatever it is. So I'm saying that now because I think that also that could be relevant to this topic and would just be fun to share, you know, the community of it. So
Yeah.
do you guys, what do you think about that? That I'm going to make a claim and then I want to know what you think. I think that in situations where you're forced to survive, not like, oh, I'm this and I have to survive my test like in college. Like, no. I'm talking like if you walk out the door in 4 minutes, you might freeze and get frostbite. I'm talking like you can't go out at night because, hey, there are bombs being dropped in your house, or like you're in a place where you have to actually hunt for your food because you don't have a store. I am arguing that it's in those situations, it's easier to find peace than having so much convenience in so many options. I think that there's less peace in that world than there is in a survival, in a state of survival.
You think there's less peace in the world that's more comfortable?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it. Yes. I would say that just off the bat, my gut inclination is to agree with that statement. Mainly because I think that like the hardships that have happened while I've lived here in Wales, I mean, first of all, I just want to say that like the community I live in is absolutely incredible. The people here are amazing. They've been super welcoming. They're incredibly helpful. And to be a part of such community, like I'm just so lucky to be welcomed here and to be able to work here. And it's really cool. And I would say that because of the hardships that happen, like it definitely, it's kind of like that the humor that I was talking about earlier. It kind of forces everyone to be lighthearted a lot of the time because like you don't know when the next hardship will be, you know? And so a lot of people are seeking peace and a lot of people are seeking comfort. And when you have a bunch of people that are seeking peace and comfort and joy all around each other, things tend to be peaceful, comfortable, and joyful, you know? Until something happens and then it's like, okay, we have to switch to a different mindset right now so that we can get to that peace and that comfort and that joy again, you know? I also think that experiencing hardship hardships frequently creates gratitude. And I think that gratitude is instrumental in having peace. Like going like Dalton and I, you and I talked about this over the summer, but like when I left Wales for the first time and went back to the lower 48, like I had been without running water for a while. And I remember the first time I watched someone turn on a faucet, and they just it was my mom, and she was making pasta, and she was filling a pot with water from the faucet, and I was like, with one flick of your wrist you just filled an entire pot with water, like you didn't have to go behind a mountain and dig through ice and get to a frozen stream and fill a
Yeah.
bucket with water and then drag it back home so you could have pasta.
Don't spill it. Don't spill
Yeah,
it.
don't spill that water. That water is precious.
You're
know?
not on the road. You're not on a nice
Yeah.
road.
Yep. And so, it inspires gratitude, we have stores here, but it's super expensive because freight is super expensive, and it has to be flown from the lower 48 to Alaska, and then it has to be flown from Anchorage to Nome, and then Nome to Wales. And by the time it gets here, it's super expensive. And so people here generally don't have as much money. And so, they rely on hunting and subsisting, and that forces them into nature and into those experiences that we were talking about earlier. And so I think that overall there is relatively more peace, but it's also hard because, when those hardships come, like they're impactful and they create trauma, and that trauma can last, and that can really impact the way people feel about themselves and the world they live in. And that can lead to very negative feelings that they have. So that was the one part that made me kind of hesitate towards the end is, a lot of people who live here, I think wouldn't be phased by the same things necessarily people in the lower 48 are phased by, but definitely experience really negative and emotions, which can lead to lives that are not very peaceful as well. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, I make this statement and know for sure that it's not 100% true all the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's going to be different circumstances that, as you're saying that, having a small community makes death more emotional than if you have 100 people that one of them dies. That's a massive thing because 100 people. But if 10,000 people, or there's 10 million people, or maybe there's 5 million or 6 million in Atlanta, like one person dying, you're like, well, I really miss that person, but there's a lot of people out here, so
yeah,
say that it's not important. But there's got to be a correlation to little people, and one of them dies, like it's gonna feel a loss in the village. Everybody's got a role in the village. There isn't people. I don't know. I imagine there's less people just sitting around playing video games and living in their basement, in the village. I don't know.
There are.
Yeah.
There are. Yeah, I think that there are people. Yeah, it's hard because like video games, are an escape in a lot of ways, and so like one of the things that people go to when they feel upset about the things that they've experienced in life is that, and so that definitely does happen for sure. But you're right. Eventually push comes to shove and your house is without power and you need to get more water and you need to take your trash and there's no running water. So people have honey buckets. You need to dispose of your honey buckets in a waste lagoon. Like,
what's a honey bucket for all the people who have no idea?
A honey bucket is a bucket. You put a little trash bag in it and then you do your business in it.
What kind of business?
And it's got a little toilet seat lid.
A toilet seat lid. Okay, that kind of business.
Yep, that kind of business.
Yeah,
so
sweet like honey.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yep. So, chores catch up to you, and when push comes to ultimately you're right. Everyone does need to help. When shit goes south and power's out in the village and homes are getting cold and we need to figure out an emergency shelter, like everyone starts picking up and doing their things, and everyone has skills and experience somewhere, and we all use it together to work together to try and find a solution as fast as possible, for sure. um and through that, yeah, I agree, there is a higher level of peace because, like, I mean, I don't know, people here still get phased by drama, and small things can still be annoying, but there's definitely a different perspective in the sense that, like, I think that there is a greater appreciation for the times when we're able to come together and just celebrate being together and finding joy, that I don't see in the lower 48.
Yeah, well, I think the correlation it is in intense moments. We realize we need each other, and then we
Yeah.
come together and we have community. I think the pattern of the lower 48 is the opportunity to be so self-sustaining. You think you don't need anybody anymore, and then you become isolated, and you essentially put yourself in the state of survival mode. Forgetting that you have the ability to connect. So, like, I mean, as much as, like, we've talked about meditation and solitude and all of these things, we're social creatures. We need each other, really. And I think when community gets forgotten is when that self-isolation that happens. And I think when moments of neuroticism or high depression or high anxiety are likely found in people that are more isolated, and don't connect. And I think in struggle, I think the correlation is you have to come together, and that sort of breaks that suffering, and it's like, okay, we're working towards something together, and it creates this, like, solidarity. And even in more, like, the moments you've talked about, like, where you felt peace and like at ease, it's like you're sitting next to all these people, and you accept that you're, like, suffering together, and it makes it almost meaningful in this way.
It is meaningful for sure.
So it's like it's the community part, I think, like the connection that happens in suffering that makes it seem that suffering is the or struggle or is the seems that a life of that would be more peaceful. But I think without struggle, you have to be a lot more intentional of creating community in your day. And I think that's where most people in America, in, like, the lower 48 of America, are coming to realize that it's like we have to be intentional about creating community. Otherwise, we'll just self-isolate.
People be blowing their heads off and swallowing pills and all kinds of
all
retarded
kinds
things.
of stuff because we're not coming together, because you don't have to really so much anymore. Is what I think about that.
Totally. I mean, hey, well, yeah. I mean, best, Christian. I mean, hey, we got a country founded on independence, and people take that on as an identity. Like, I don't need anybody, and it's true, you don't. But when you choose that path, like, you end up maybe consciously or unconsciously wanting it.
Right.
Yeah.
That idea of leave my shit alone and I'll leave yours alone only gets you so far before you're like, fuck, I'm lonely on my little plot of land.
Yeah.
Or, like, your stuff could help my stuff, and my stuff could help your stuff. It's like you really don't have to do it alone.
Yeah. People are always just looking for love.
It's true.
It's true.
It is.
That's why I think, like, so then, like, if I was to prove my point the opposite, like, if I go, well, no, let's talk about that. Like, how would we prove the opposite belief true? Well, then, being in a state of poverty or oppressed by somebody, some group of people oppressed by another group of people, no matter what those two groups of people are, being is not peaceful. And then I'm trying to think of, like, there are extreme situations in time that have happened where people were not at peace because they're suffering, in some way. And in that moment, like when we look at the whole picture, we go, wow, there was probably a shitload of suffering at that time in this group of people. And then you go, because we're just looking at objectively, like that situation sucked. But then, you know, in my personal experience, and personal experience is like the lowest level of credibility, you know, on a scale of credibility. You know,
Right.
some
Yeah.
personal experience is like, so I'm starting at the lowest level. But I think that what happens is what we're talking about is like through that tragedy, people have control to create community so it's less tragic. Like they take control of what, or they take a hold of what is within their control and they change it.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
it's like there becomes this, in the military, we call it embracing the suck. Everybody suffers together.
Yeah.
In the military, well, at least when I went through, there wasn't individual punishment. It was not a thing. Everybody was punished for one person, 80 people. One person fucks up, 80 people have to suffer. So it builds this sense of community, and the idea of a drill sergeant and a soldier is that you break down that soldier, all these soldiers, so far that they band together. The point is to deconstruct every idea you had about your identity so you rebuild it with the community and the people that are next to you. You go, I know that this motherfucker has got my back. So
Yeah.
if he's suffering, then I'm going to choose to suffer with him. I'm not going to let him suffer. I'm going to drag his ass all the way until we're both finished.
Yep.
You know, when I was in the military, we used to do the runs, and I used to run real fast. You know, I would finish, you know, maybe 6-8 minutes before everybody else. And then I'd go back. I'd run the opposite direction and then bring the next guy in. And then I'd go run back and bring the next guy in. And then go run back and then bring the next guy in. By the time I'd done, I'd run like 2 or 3 times what everybody else had run, but I brought everybody home. And then the more I started to do that, the more that all the other soldiers just did that. So now there's this sense of community where that person who's taking, you know, however many minutes to run however many miles is working the whole time. So just because I can do it faster, I actually did less work. So now it's like, now we get to go share this level of like, let's work together and we'll bring you home. And, you know, this can be analogous to people who feel oppressed. There's so many groups in America who feel oppressed, and they can create identities that isolate them. But I think that they gravitate towards other people who have the same ideology, and they build a community around the oppression. So they feel like they have a realm of power and control. And I think what would, you know, be beneficial to realize is that sometimes our perception is just perpetuated by our beliefs. And because we're strong manifestors, like human beings are able to manifest much of anything. I believe in God, and I think that we have God within us, and I believe that we have the power to create whatever we want. And because of that power, I believe that a lot of people create challenges for themselves in such an immense way that they are pointing the finger at everybody else, and they are seeing a reality, and to them it's true. And if they changed their mind, they could experience the same reality with less judgment. And I think that this is truly my message of identity. Where is your identity coming from, and how far are you perpetuating your experience? Whether it's positive or negative, you're responsible for it. I think that hey, Christian, you're like a history buff. And absolutely, there have been times where people have been so shitty to other people. And there's typically like a group who's like, guess what? I don't want this to happen anymore. And they are the underdogs. They rise to the occasion, and they don't take on the identity that they're being told to have.
Yeah.
And then they change the world. But the reason that the world changes, or that those set of oppressors and non-oppressors change, is because a group of people is like, hey, I don't believe what you believe, and now I'm going to take action on that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple things I would separate. I think that if someone is coming from the position of like trying to talk about the different things that have happened, and let's say they're from a specific group of people and they're trying to talk about unfair treatment that group of people has been exposed to, and they're trying to change those things, and like they feel like that's their purpose, like good on you. If someone's being mistreated and you're trying to change that, like I think that that's a really good thing to work towards. If you're letting that affect your identity in the sense of saying that, I've been mistreated and I will continue to be mistreated, and, you are creating a feeling of like powerlessness in yourself, or a feeling of like, the world is unfair, and just living in that, I think that you're really working against yourself in that respect. You know what I mean? I don't think you're going to be as effective in doing what you're trying to do, and I think that, obviously we would agree that people have been mistreated historically. That's just part of human nature, is creating categories and boundaries and separating people into those categories and saying the category I'm in is better than the category you're in. So fuck you, you're going to do all the hard work. You know what I mean? And so that happens. And so when people are trying to fight against those systems, I think that's great. But I think that, I agree that if you're going to live in that system and allow it to inform you in the sense of like creating your identity around that and allowing that to negatively impact you and take you away from that feeling of like divine love and divine purpose, like it's hard. I think that overall would be negative. Ultimately at the end of the day, I think at some point you just have to accept that, like, hey, right now the world is the way that it is, society is structured the way that it's structured, and if you want to change that and you want to fight for that, great, do that. But I think that make sure that you're doing everything you can to follow that purpose and follow it well, because just allowing yourself to feel negative feelings and create, I guess, that identity would not be constructive or helpful in that situation. Not to say that you shouldn't feel upset if you're being untreated fairly, but right, channel that into something that is going to create a solution, I guess, is
or
what.
I think
what I mean?
Totally. And I really love the way that you articulated that. And I think that, a lot of challenges that people create for themselves is feeling like they're stuck. And there's a difference between not having an option and not knowing how to go forward with an option.
Right.
Like having, I think it's more of an illusion of the mind to feel like you have no options. Like we don't really live, people aren't in many situations where there isn't options. There's more situations that people have no idea how to change their circumstances.
Yeah.
But there's a difference. Like the option to change your circumstances widely available nearly all the time. To me,
Right.
I would more than 90% of the time, the option to change your situation is available, especially in America. I mean, in other countries may be different, but if you live in America, you could change your life. Period. And I think that there's absolutely a gap, and most people have no idea how to do that. And that's really the biggest challenge for people, is not knowing where to start. And that's what I think the feeling of powerlessness comes from. And also, like, and I'm saying this because in the situation where you're like, hey, you could just change the people you're around. Like, for me, that has been a pivotal factor in my growth. Like, for the visions that I have for myself, I had to change the people I surrounded myself with, because I wasn't expressing like what I knew to be my full potential. I was focusing on in these other areas that were just not relevant to the places that I was looking to go. So I was able to go, you know, I think this is holding me back to be friends with this person. Or there have been times where I've separated myself from family members. And there have been times where freaking my family members separated themselves from me. And I absolutely, hey, I get it. Like I may have separated myself from me at that time too. I don't know. Probably not. I'm pretty cool. I'm pretty chill homie, you know. But but I get why they did it.
Yeah.
So I think that that's it. Like, you know, if there are many situations in our country where people have changed the outcome in the direction of their lineage because they were fed up with where they were at.
Right.
You know, I mean, I think maybe this idea of picking up your bags and going to LA to become an actor or a musician, like in the 70s, in the 60s, like you could just do that. And like, that was the way to change your life. It's like, I don't want to be on a farm. I'm going to go be a starlet, and I'm going to New York or LA.
Yep.
Like, you know, those opportunities exist today. And like, you don't even have to leave your farm. You could just record what it's like to be on a farm and make 6 figures on the internet. If you can afford the internet, then you could change your life, and you don't even have to stop being a farmer. You could just, you know what I mean? Like, you could be like, wow, I make my money farming, but most of my money comes from teaching other farmers how to be a farmer. Like, I don't know.
I think absolutely it is the recognition of something being wrong invaluable if there's nothing followed to change or to do. But I will say, I think the recognition that something isn't right is the first step into any form of change internally or socially. So like there is, and it's not to encourage victimization of oneself, but I think there might be like a disconnect of the amount of, maybe that's like a reality that someone has to like sit with for a little bit to know what to do next. But when you realize that something's wrong in your life or socially, like how our system is built or how you've been living your life, you know, one like in the same is like you do like there is that moment of realizing that something's wrong, and I think the distance of time between action from that moment differs for people. In like, so it's not to like, I absolutely think that a lot of people get stuck nowadays knowing that there's a lot of things wrong because it is, human nature is not comfortable for a lot of people, for anyone, I guess. And the more and more reality we become exposed to through social media, through media online, we see more and more of like, man, like there's a lot of messed up stuff going on. And I think it can become absolutely feel destabilizing and create dysregulation in the body and create like these illusions of like everything's fucked up and I need like, and you become stuck feeling. And ultimately I think why this, these conversations that we have like of empowerment and realizing that you do have choice are so important. But I don't think it's to say that sometimes the recognition of the wrongness just takes a different amount of time for people to make change after that.
Could you elaborate more on that?
Like, let's say a woman realizes that she doesn't like how she's being treated in a marriage, but XYZ is also true if she leaves the marriage. Like, she has kids and these consequences, and she'll have to get a job. And if she hasn't been making her own money, it's not that she has the inability to make the change, but the amount of time, like, she realizes that this marriage is not serving her, but the consequence of the change might need further compression, or the negotiation in her head is like, it's not worth the change. So then she accepts this reality as, I prioritize my children's lives of us staying together versus me leaving this marriage. Even though she does have full choice, there's just also like the nature of reality is like, you absolutely have choice, but there's also consequence. So it's like, what really is the most empowered choice for someone is not going to be the same for everyone.
Well, and this, I think, falls exactly into what my point was at the beginning, is that the opportunity is there, and the knowledge to get to where this woman wants to be is lacking. Because if the idea is let's say she's a stay-at-home mom, because you said she has to get a job, which would have implied that she's not making money. So if there was a way to leave the marriage because she wanted to, there's two options. Either she can make the marriage better or leave the marriage and not have hardship. Like, those would be the two best case scenarios. Either like she understands that she realizes the tools that she needs to make the marriage better, or she realizes the tools she needs to leave the marriage and have an easier time.
Right.
Like, in both situations, that requires effort, action, and education, like a desire. So like, it's not possible, because people leave their marriages all the time, and housewives that were taken care of end up starting a business in an area that they absolutely love, and they take care of their single mom power. So I think that absolutely that you're correct in that situation by stating those emotions and feeling like the limitation was brought on by that woman, though, because she thinks that her only options are to stay in the marriage and suffer, so she doesn't, and that is less disruptive, or it's less suffering than leaving the marriage and getting a job. So those are the two options she gave herself, which aren't all the options. Or maybe, she didn't, maybe she's thinking she has no experience, so who's going to hire her, which may be true, in that factor. Like, maybe she's definitely less appealing than somebody who does have experience, or whatever. You could apply that to anything. So absolutely, there are challenges that would have to be overcome. And so I think that in that situation, there is this ideology of now I just have to pick between which is the least amount of suffering.
Mhm.
When I think an incredible message to share with people is, what if you thought of how you could get exactly what you wanted? Because the option to have exactly what you want is always available. You just may not know how to do it.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And this is the whole thing about somebody being oppressed by somebody and not. It's like that world is absolutely here, and it I think is not ever going to change. Like, the world is going to change, and people who feel like they judge themselves, judge other people. People also love to have power over others. It's like through all of time, like people are always trying to be one-upping each other and like being shitty. So since that's been true all of time, maybe with the exception of Aboriginals, but you know, maybe there's some one-off situations in that, you know, culture. I know that they didn't have war, so we brought that. Not we, I'm not English, but like, you know, then Aboriginals went there and showed them what that looks like. So anyways, but I digress. Coming back to this situation where we live in this world where like you may not know the option of how to have the best case scenario, but if you think of what the best case scenario is, that's the awareness that you talked about earlier.
Mhm.
Is having that awareness is the first step, or just being able to inspire that people have more options. Maybe you're trying to solve a problem. This is Dr. Fred DiDomenico with the same level of consciousness that created the problem.
Mm.
In order to have an answer that transcends the problem, you have to get yourself to a higher level of consciousness.
Interesting.
Actually, I think he says that's an Albert Einstein thing. I could be wrong. I'm not Googling that in this very moment. But it's either Fred or Albert Einstein, both of which are, either way, it's a pretty good quote.
Yeah, it makes sense for sure.
Can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. That's Albert Einstein.
I think, yeah, one of his major quotes is like, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again, but expecting different results.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Right. Thanks, Albert.
Thanks, Albert.
Thanks, Albert.
Thanks for thinking so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
In
And
writing
you-
some equations.
his love letter to his daughter, or was it his wife? You know about this? No, do you know, Christian? No.
Nope.
Wow. I get
You
to
got it, D-man. You got me.
I don't know exactly what it says, but all right, I'll pull it up really quick.
Yeah, read it.
All right, we'll get it.
Hear it.
Because it's cool. Albert, it has to do about love on his deathbed. Albert Einstein's love life. Yeah, that's what comes up. I put love and it's like love life. Just kidding. To his daughter. Okay. Leisure un eit un. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. That was funny. You like that one? Okay. All right. When I proposed the theory of, this is Albert Einstein to his daughter. Right. It says Lyserl on the universal force of love. I don't know what Lyserl means, but anyways, here we go. When I proposed the theory of relativity, very few people understood me. And what I will reveal now to transmit to mankind will also collide with the misunderstanding and prejudice in the world. I ask you to guard the letters as long as necessary, years, decades, until society is advanced enough to accept what I will explain below. There's an extremely powerful force that so far science has not found a formal explanation to.
It is a force that includes and governs all others. And this is even behind any phenomenon operating in the universe and has not yet been identified by us. This universal force is love. When scientists looked for a unified theory of the universe, they forgot the most powerful unseen force. Love is light that enlightens those who give and receive it. Love is gravity because it makes people feel attracted to others. Love is power because it multiplies the best we have and allows humanity to not be extinguished in their blind selfishness. Love unfolds and reveals. For love we live and die. Love is God and God is love. The force explains everything and gives meaning to life. This is the variable that we have ignored for too long, maybe because we are afraid of love, because it is the only energy in the universe that man has not learned to drive at will. To give visibly to love. I made a simple substitution in my famous equation. If instead of E equals mc squared, we accept that the energy to heal the world can be obtained through love, multiplied by the speed of light squared, we arrive at the conclusion that love is the most powerful force there is because it has no limits. After the failure of humanity in the use of control of others forces the universe that have turned against us, it is urgent that we nourish ourselves with another kind of energy. If we want our species to survive, if we are to find meaning in life, if we want to save the world and every sentient being that inhabits it, love is the one and only answer. Perhaps we are not yet ready to make a bomb of love, a device powerful enough to entirely destroy the hate, selfishness, and greed that devastate the planet. However, each individual carries within them a small but powerful generator of love whose energy is waiting to be released. When we learn to give and receive this universal energy, dear Lyserl, that's probably his daughter's name, we will have affirmed that love conquers all, is able to transcend everything and anything, because love is the quintessence of life. I deeply regret not having been able to express what is in my heart, which has quietly beaten for you all my life. Maybe it's too late to apologize, but as time is relative, I need to tell you that I love you. And thanks to you, I have reached the ultimate answer. Your father, Albert Einstein.
Whoa.
How about that?
That's pretty good.
Pretty good. Thanks, Al.
Yep. That's pretty dope.
Isn't that cool?
Yep.
Tell us your thoughts.
Love is the unifying force of the universe.
Yep.
It's perfect. I don't know. It's exactly everything. Like, this is the message all of time.
This
Is
is
this.
the chiropractic message.
Yes, this is the chiropractic.
There you go.
There you go.
But I mean, in every sacred text, this is the message of the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, when you get into sacred ancient text, it's this over and over and over and over again. And it's like, okay, it's love, and it's love, and it's love. So,
Thinking about this all ties into everything we've talked about today. And, Christian has done so much learning on different religions and faiths. And I, maybe not as much as Christian, but I have studied it. But one of the things about Islam, the Muslim faith, is that they program suffering into their faith to have this level of gratitude and community with each other. You know, their holidays heavily involve voluntary suffering as a community. And it really, I have many Muslim friends. I know that you do too, Christian. I think that their communities are statistically the strongest right now.
Yeah.
As far as population, perpetuating their faith. They're like all over Europe. Like they're prosperous.
We are two decades away from Muslims being the most predominant religion in the world by population.
Yeah, crazy. So,
and we're in the middle of the holy month of Ramadan right now. So, I mean, billions of Muslims across the planet are fasting.
Yeah, daily. Yeah, for how long? It's like a month. Month, right? Yeah. And then they have, another holiday, Eid, that is having to do with raising an animal, and you raise the animal as if it's part of the family, and you name it, you feed it, and you care for it, and during this month you slaughter it and you eat it. Mm-hmm. And the point of that, there's a story, and I don't know the story, so I'm sorry guys, I don't remember. But there is a story in the Quran that talks about having to sacrifice somebody that you love. And this is part of the beauty, I think, in that religion is they raise an animal and then they slaughter it and eat it. But it's something that is so close and personal to them, and it mirrors this. I don't know how I reference a Quranical, not a biblical, but Quranical.
Yep.
Yeah. Story that, brings their faith in humanity back to them, which I think is cool.
Right.
And this is all, anyways, so it kind of trailed off there, but the whole point, bringing it back to this Einstein letter and love, is like, that's what we're talking about so much, is community and being around other human beings and expressing love for each other. No judgment for yourself. That's self-love. And then when you're not judging yourself, how is it possible for you to judge other people? This is what I was talking about earlier. When I'm like having judgmental thoughts towards Bella, the first thing that I think of now is I'm judging myself. And then as soon as I have that thought, I'm like, this is so dumb. It like turns my brain off. I'm like, nope, don't do that. Because I think in my own mind, I refuse to judge myself. It'd be easier to judge somebody else. I guess, to me, in the way that I like trick myself into not judging people is to go, if I'm judging somebody else, then I'm judging myself, and I refuse to judge myself. It's a stronger reference point for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think a powerful tool with that is then to become curious on why. Like to then ask, like, okay, what part of me is wanting to judge that? I
do. And what happens is, what I find is that I'm not moving towards my purpose. Yeah. Like I'm lacking the action necessary to move forward on my goals. And that is the times when I feel critical of myself and others. When I'm taking massive action and I'm just crushing my goals, I feel invincible, and I'm not judging anybody. And I'm speaking that same like energy into other people, Like when I'm just crushing my goals, I'm like, you're fucking awesome. You see that guy right there? Sexiest beast I ever saw in this parking lot. There's nobody more attractive in this parking lot than you. And then they laugh because they go, this parking lot, and then it's a joke, you know what I mean? Because it's a world, but then it's funny. It breaks up the humor, but then they're not going to remember that I said this parking lot. They're going to remember that I said I thought they were sexy,
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
I think connecting what you just said back to Eid, Eid al-Adhan is the one you were describing, and it's the story of in the Bible we call him Abraham, but in the Quran his name is Ibrahim, and he's commanded by God to kill his son. And
Yeah.
he takes the son up to the mountaintop and he gets ready to kill his son. And at the last minute, as his blade falls onto his son's neck, God replaces his son with a ram.
Mm.
And the story is supposed to show you that, you know, first of all, God has a plan and he's not going to directly cause you suffering. And so if you put your trust in God, then and follow that trust, which you would call your purpose, right? If you put your trust in that divine purpose and you follow that purpose, the tragedy and the harm that you experience are not there to destroy you or break you down. They're there to build you up and to teach you something and to push you forward and to make sure that you have the knowledge that you need to continue walking on your path, you know? And so, yeah, that willingness to sacrifice what he loved most. I mean, in Islam, it goes deeper into like the idea of submission, how one, you know, a Muslim translates into English as one who submits or he who submits himself. So one who submits before God, but you could just rephrase that as one who follows their own purpose, their divine purpose, and trusts in it and knows that, you know, there are things that you're going to experience that are challenging, that are difficult, that are tragic, but ultimately the things that you may not have been able to fulfill your purpose had you not learned the lessons you needed to learn from those things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
there are things I go through in the moment and I'm like, man, this sucks like a lot, you know? Like,
Yeah.
this is awful. I hate this. I don't want to live, you know, like there are days where I live here and I'm like, I don't want to live here anymore. This is hard.
Yeah.
I want to go home and I want to take a shower. I haven't taken a shower.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
I just did laundry in a fucking plastic bag, you know, like I just want to put my clothes in a laundry machine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I want to go turn on a faucet. Instead, I have a 5-gallon jug of water that I hauled from a mountain 1.5 miles away that we call Razorback, you know, like, so there are days where it's hard and I, you know,
And
and
you
I don't
dribble the water
understand.
out too.
Yeah, exactly.
Bottle is just like yeah. You're not
You know?
wasting it. You're like washing your hands with a bowl under it. So you can
Yeah.
use the water for your laundry later.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Totally.
So, you know, but at the end of the day, like I love living here because I'm growing as I'm going through that. I'm learning things I never would have learned. And when the apocalypse happens, y'all are going to be fucking looking for me.
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
I feel like that might be the safest place to go. I've had this thought a few times.
Yeah.
And like to go to the cold would probably be, I mean, it'd be so hard. But if you learned how to survive in the cold, like there probably wouldn't be that many people there. Like they just, if you knew how to survive in the tundra, like, yeah, there are bears and shit. And if you figured out how to make shelter, you'd probably avoid other people killing you so much.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's plentiful. There are plentiful resources. So you're not, well, plentiful until winter hits, but there aren't people, you're not risking exposure to like whatever, if it's a disease or whatever. I even thought if there's a zombie apocalypse, this is where I'm going to be. Like
Yeah.
the zombies would freeze trying to get to my front door. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like,
Yeah.
it'd be great. Yeah, exactly. They're all
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
frozen outside. I'll make a little frozen zombie statue garden or something,
Yeah.
you know? But
Frozen
yeah.
zombie statue garden.
Yep.
Nice.
So yeah,
Do
I
you-
think that not trusting your purpose and like veering away from that is not great. And not trusting that like you are here for a reason. Like there is something that you're supposed to be doing. And you know, maybe even just being present for someone on a day when they were having like a fucked time, or I'm sorry to cuss on your thing, but
We
when
do.
they're
We do. It's okay. Sorry,
okay,
Grant.
no, when they're
Watch-
having a fucked day, you know, and you're just
Get out of
like
your
there
will,
for
Grant.
them. Yeah.
Use the F word. Take him out of your will.
Yep.
He's way more financially secure than me anyway. I need the help.
There you go. Yeah. You got a business to build.
Yeah.
You
That's
need the
funny.
capital.
Yeah, I need the capital. That's funny. That's funny.
Yep. So you never know when you're fulfilling your purpose too. That's something I've reflected on a lot. Like some small random interaction you have could have just like fucking changed someone's day or their life.
I
And
think
sometimes you don't even know that, you know?
that is so grounding for so many people. Like that sentiment alone, I think so many people are like, how am I supposed to know my purpose? How am I supposed to? And then it's just like, you're like,
Be nice.
if you are softened to the moment, like you absolutely are living it. There's no, sometimes, like that. I love that. Wait, you
Yeah.
said sometimes you don't know.
Yeah, it's true.
Yep.
Freaking awesome.
Pretty cool.
I know. That was a solid one, I think.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. I mean, it was good. We took,
We're
3 hours?
creeping on 3 hours.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But I think it's so to sum up what we went through. We started with, what it's like to be teaching out where you're at. We had, let's see, we talked about what it's like to be isolated. And actually, we talked about what it's like to be isolated, as in you being in a village of 100 people. And we talked about what it's like to be isolated, surrounded by 6 million.
Yeah.
So we've talked about isolation and identity and what happens in that time. I think it's so cool to be able to share like attributes of an identity that's able to transcend challenges. I think that's really the message of this podcast is, how do you create an identity that can transcend any circumstance? Which is cool.
That's pretty dope.
Love.
It's not.
Love.
Love.
That's it.
LOVE. Wow. We should just have 1 million podcasts like this.
Yeah.
I agree.
Sick. Well, dude. All right. Well, let's wrap this one up and we'll put a bookmark in it for next time.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Thanks for having me on. I love you guys.
I
I
love
love
you
you
so
too.
much. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. Let's see.